podcast for the best and worst historical fiction has to offer. I'm your host, Grace.
And I'm Erin, and each week we'll be reading a different historical fiction book to see if they're a 5 or a flop.
Season 2's theme is Booktok and Bestsellers, and for me, this book is like the pinnacle, like the definition of a historical fiction bestseller. We're reading The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini.
Yes, this is one I've heard a lot about, but hadn't actually read before this.
No, me neither.
So I'm really excited to talk about, and it had been on my list for a while anyway, so 2 birds, 1 stone.
Yes.
What is new with you this week?
We are, at this point, prepping our plans for Independent Bookstore Day, which is coming this weekend. If you live in the United States, you should definitely participate. It's a nationwide thing. A lot of bookstores will have little events on a Saturday normally. They'll maybe have discounts. It's just a rollicking good time to go and support your independent bookstores.
Rollicking, that's a great word.
Thank you.
This Saturday is also, if you're here in DC, well, it's going to be way in the past, so it doesn't matter. DC, different neighborhoods do this thing called Porch Fest, which is where they have, I don't know if you've been able to, you've been. Yeah. They have local bands come out and perform like on people's porches. So it's Petworth Porch Fest this Saturday. So we're going up to Petworth. I'm going to try and see if they have any bookstores up there that I haven't been to before to check out as well. 2 birds, 1 stone. Exactly. But I love Porch Fest. It's such a fun time to just be outside and listen to music. You could just walk around. A lot of stores will have like all-day happy hour type stuff going on. So
very DC.
It's a lot of fun.
Yes, definitely.
Sadly, can't bring my dog to this one because it's a bit far of a walk for her to get
and
to
she
Petworth.
has very tiny legs.
She does have very tiny legs. However, when it was in Admo, we brought her in her banana costume. Or actually, Santiago did because I was in Japan.
And she does not love a costume.
No, but she tolerates a costume now.
Well, that's better for you.
Yes. And what are you reading right now?
Well, I am not reading it yet, but as of this recording, we love to date ourselves when we do these in advance. Mm-hmm. But tomorrow, Emily Henry's new book comes out. So this is divisive on the pod.
A touchy subject for the pod.
Have we established on the pod that I'm an Emily Henry stan and you're an Emily Henry anti?
Oh, we've talked about people we meet on vacation many times.
Yeah. Anyway, here, I will say this, though. I did not like her most recent book very much, Happy Place. So I'm still, like, I pre-ordered Funny Story. I'm going to go buy it in person. I'm excited to read it. But she has to get me back. I liked all of her other books, but she's got to get me back a little bit. But I'm still excited because, you know, I love a rom-com.
Okay. Yeah. I'm excited for you.
Thank you. What are you reading?
I just started this book called Summer of Salt, which I got off, I believe it's YA. The girls are like 18 in it.
Okay.
I got it off Thrift Books. So I don't really know anything about it, but I needed like one more book to get free shipping and it was like $3. So I'm like, yeah, sure, why not?
Okay.
But I'm excited to be reading a YA book again. I feel like, especially with pod books, like this being one of them, we've read a lot of heavy books lately.
Yes.
And heavy not just in terms of length, but also in terms of subject matter. It's just been like a dense reading period for me lately. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited to read something a bit lighter.
Well, I will say, getting a little bit into our book for the week, The Kite Runner was the first book that I read after we had wrapped up our move. Like, once the boxes were unpacked, like, I had a suitcase that was, like, my go bag. And it was, like, you know, my clothes for the next day and, like, my hand soap and shampoo and, like, you know, and my book. Because I was like, well, I need to have a book handy.
Yeah, of course.
And I packed, I was, like, doing preparation for the pod, like a good podcast host would. And I packed The Kite Runner. So the first book that I read next day after we moved in, I started reading this. And I had not been reading for a few days. And the one beforehand, the book that I had just finished, I was not a huge fan of. Mm-hmm. And so I started reading The Kite Runner. And even though it does deal with a lot of dark themes, I was like, reading this is just like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
Like, I read it slowly over a period of several days, which is not normally how I read. I read like a lot at once. And it was just really nice.
And that's so funny because I was planning on sharing this later, but I basically read this book in one sitting. I had a flight from DC to San Antonio for work, and on the first leg of it was a layover. On the first leg, I finished listening to all of The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna, which I've talked about already, but is a very... And cried in front of the flight attendants. And then on the second part, I just whipped through this entire book, and I actually saw someone else on the flight reading it too. So if that was you, pod besties.
Well, and I feel like that goes to show really where this book like has its place in the like popular fiction American like lexicon. Yeah. Like that this book came out in the early 2000s and people are reading it on the plane like yesterday.
It is widely read. But so I had a very different reading experience than you. I read this all basically in one sitting. So I'm excited to talk about that difference a bit.
Yeah.
Because usually I feel like it's not, like, I feel like I usually take longer.
Well, I feel like I could so easily dive into conversation right now, so why don't you give us the synopsis first?
Exactly. The unforgettable, heartbreaking story of the unlikely friendship between a wealthy boy and the son of his father's servant, caught in the tragic sweep of history. The Kite Runner transport readers to Afghanistan at a tense and crucial moment of change and destruction. A powerful story of friendship, it is also about the power of reading, the price of betrayal, and the possibility of redemption, and an exploration of the power of fathers over sons, their love, their sacrifices, their lies.
That's pretty, like, symbolic leaning, but I think it decently and aptly summarizes what's up with the book.
Yeah, it definitely focuses a bit more on the themes than the plot, but that's fine. Yeah. I'm okay with that.
Do you want to tell me a little bit now about Khaled Hosseini?
Yes. So he is an Afghani-American author born in Afghanistan. He is the son of a diplomat. So when a lot of what's happening in the book picks up, his family was actually stationed in Paris, so he was away from the violence.
Okay.
He began writing this book while practicing medicine. And which is, I believe, the second author this season who was medically affiliated. Julia Quinn was in med school.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Khaled Hosseini would be happy with that comparison because Julia Quinn did not complete med school.
No, it's different. But interesting that we have two and both non-medical focused books at all.
Yeah, like right and left brain.
Yeah,
very much so.
Very interesting. In 2006, he was appointed a Goodwill Ambassador by the UN Refugee Agency, and then later he started a nonprofit that offers humanitarian assistance to Afghanistan.
Okay. I am super excited for you to get into the history of this book later because as I was reading it, I very purposely did not look anything up.
Okay.
But I was like, I feel like there is a lot of strong relationship ties between this author and this main character. So
interesting.
I don't know how much of it, like, and I'm sure as the book goes on and you get more and more into like crazier things are happening, I was like, okay, clearly this didn't happen in real life. But I was wondering, I was like, how much of this is just like Khaled Hosseini?
Interesting, because I have some stuff that might surprise you a little.
All right. Well, I'm excited to get there.
Have you read anything else by this author?
No, actually. I know that obviously there's this book and there's 1,000 Splendid Suns. I will say I have seen the Kite Runner movie.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And it was a long time ago because basically one of my English teachers in high school, our summer reading assignment was a list of 4 books.
Okay.
And it was either you have to read one of these, but all of them had film versions.
Okay.
And it was you can either read one of these books and then watch a film version for another one of the books, or you can read The Brothers Karamazov.
I'm not familiar with that.
Dostoevsky.
Oh, okay.
So I was like, okay, I'm not going to do that. So I think the book that I chose to read was Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston, which is one of my like top 3 books I've ever read in my life.
Interesting. Okay.
Excellent. Highly recommend that book. I don't think we can get it into the podcast because I don't think it technically counts as historical fiction. And then I watched the film for The Kite Runner.
Okay.
So it's been a long enough time that I'm not sure I could really speak for its quality, but I remember liking it.
Okay. I actually have a bit about the movie I'm going to talk about in the historical accuracy section.
Ooh.
I have not seen the movie and I have not read anything else by him. However, I really want to read 1,000 Splendid Suns.
Yes, that was the other thing. I have not read 1,000 Splendid Suns either, but I definitely would.
Yes. Let's hop in with our disclaimer. Our judgments come based on the book and characters within the books rather than any real historical figures they may have been based on. And obviously full spoilers ahead.
Yes.
So, this book was very impressive to me.
Yeah.
It covered a long span.
It really did.
And I think let's, not now, but put a pin in the later parts of the book, and we're going to have the same conversation as we did with Fruit of the Drunken Tree about where the line of something being considered historical falls.
Yes. The early parts of the book certainly are historical.
Yes. But we'll put a pin in that for now. The growth in this book is incredible, not just in terms of the plot expanding outward and getting bigger as it goes, but also the individual character and thematic growth I thought was probably the best we've seen.
It was intensive, and especially given all that I've said about children characters in the books that we've read, there is such a clear sense, because our main character is Amir, and he starts at 10 or 12. And he grows into, by the end, he's a, grown man. And you have such a strong sense that he is the same person the whole time.
Yes.
And of course he grows and changes. Everyone does, especially when they have such, the life circumstances that he ends up having. Mm-hmm. But he is such his own individual person the whole time.
Yes.
And that, I think, is really tricky to navigate. And Khaled Hosseini does it really, really well.
Phenomenally. Definitely the characters were the strongest part of this novel for me.
Mm-hmm. And I think he manages to evoke a lot of emotion in his prose without it being the fanciest prose. I think especially towards the beginning, he tries to push the fanciness a little bit.
Yeah.
I wrote down in my notes, I was like, he's Madeline Miller trying to be Isabel Allende.
Yes.
And that I think it fades a little more as you get into the swing of things and as he gets into the swing of things. But he doesn't need a lot of flashy language to really deliver poignancy. Like the last bit of this book, which I'm sure we'll get into a little later, was so poignant to me, the ending. It was a lot.
So do you want to give us like a bit of a plot rundown? Because we had our synopsis that was more thematic.
It was not, yeah. So we'll start really quick. So Amir lives in Afghanistan, lives in Kabul with his father, who is a very wealthy man, and they relate to each other very little. His father is a very manly man. He's all about action. His thing, which I think is important to note, I feel like thematic for the rest of the book, is he said there's only one crime and it's theft.
Yes.
He says if you sleep with a man's wife, you're stealing his right to have a happy family. He said every crime is theft. And Amir grows up with his best friend Hassan, who is, like the synopsis says, the son of his father's servant. And they're the closest friend, the closest friends you could possibly be, but they both know they have these two very different roles in life. And there is an inciting incident that causes the family to basically be separated and basically be destroyed. And then on top of this, you have all of the political unrest that's happening in Afghanistan in the 70s and a little into the 2000s, which is where it takes us into the time jump. And Amir and his father go to America. They lose track of their friends and family that are behind in Afghanistan. Much later, after Amir marries and his father passes away, he's called back to Afghanistan by an old friend who tells him Hassan has died in the conflict as a result of being an ethnic minority, and that Hassan's son has basically been taken and held captive by the Taliban, and asks him to go back to Kabul and get him.
Yes.
And so that is the book. He goes back. He finds Hassan's son, who is about 10 years old, the age that Amir and Hassan were when the book started, and go back with him to America. And you don't get a happy ending, but you get a bittersweet ending.
Yes.
You know that even though he's suffered all of this trauma, the child has suffered all of this trauma, they're going to work together on being a family.
Okay. Yes, you are so right. Bittersweet is the word I was looking for to describe the ending. Let's talk about Amir and Hassan, especially Hassan's character.
Yes, and they're really the heart of this book, even though Hassan is in strikingly little of it for the importance that he has.
Yes.
It's like when you hear, oh, X person was only on screen in this movie for a few minutes and they won an Oscar for it. Yes. Like that's the role that Hassan is pulling in this book. He basically disappears before any kind of time jump, before Amir and his father leave for America.
Yeah.
But his presence is felt throughout the whole book, and basically what Amir feels he has done to Hassan haunts him and follows him his whole life, and he knows he'll never be able to let it go.
He has unreconciled guilt because when they were boys, they were kite running, which was basically, I was a little confused about what the kite running was. They were flying kites and then they had to chase down the loser's kites.
Yes, so basically they're kite fighting.
Yeah.
So you have a kite, your kite, the string has glass on it. You're trying to cut the other kites out of the sky. And then the kite runners, Hassan is the titular kite runner.
Yes.
And it's when the losing kites get cut out of the sky, they plummet to the ground. If you catch it, it's like a trophy.
Yes. So while that's happening, Amir comes across Hassan being sexually assaulted by a group of other boys their age.
And does nothing to stop it.
And sees it and does nothing to stop it. So he's haunted by this guilt, and he can't cope with it to the point where he frames Hassan of stealing from him so that him and his father will leave.
Yes, it's these two intertwined crimes. The first one is not doing anything to defend Hassan from being raped by another boy because he is this ethnic minority.
Yes.
And the other is that he treats Hassan so badly afterwards, he pushes him away as a result of this guilt. And essentially, he frames Hassan for stealing. He takes a bunch of money that he's gotten for his birthday and puts it in Hassan's room. And because he knows, he said, my father has always said the only crime is theft.
Yes.
And of course, the framing works. Hassan gets brought in, but then the father says, I forgive you. And that he does not expect that. But Hassan's father takes him away, even though the two fathers have been like brothers their whole lives, because Hassan has told him what happened to him and that Amir did nothing to stop it. So he basically says, it's impossible for me and my son to stay here anymore. We have family that we're going to go find and we're going to leave.
Yes. So it's very heavy right off the start.
Yes. And I will say, I did not expect that plot point, and I did not see it coming. They had established the perpetrator of the assault. His name is Asif. They had established him as like a bully, but I really thought it was more like, I did not expect sexual assault to come into play at all.
That is crazy for me when I see that's what your note about, because that's the only thing I knew about this book.
Really?
Is that there was a boy who got raped right towards the beginning. Okay. I didn't know who it was or what was the context, but like that is what I knew going into this book. And I'm going to get into that when we talk about the movie, but it was like kind of a scandal.
Yeah, I had no idea.
But
no
that's
clue at
very
all.
Interesting. I thought, and I guess we can jump ahead because then it's life in America, and then eventually Amir goes back to, he actually goes to Pakistan to meet up with old family friend. So let's jump ahead a bit because I think that's what I thought when I saw your note. I did not see that coming. It's actually revealed to Amir that him and Hassan are half-brothers.
Yes, so...
And that I did not see coming.
Me neither, but it didn't take me quite as much by surprise because once you hear it, you're like, oh, that makes sense.
It does make sense.
Because you're like, otherwise you're like, oh, the rich father is really nice to this servant boy. Like whenever he brings his son along on like day trips or whatever, he's like, oh, let's bring Hassan. And you know that like Amir is like, oh, he's making up for the guilt that he feels because he slept with essentially his brother's wife, not his brother literally, but his brother emotionally, to have Hassan. And he's making up for that guilt, but also he cares about Hassan like a son.
Yes.
And another element of that is, like I said before, the father is this manly man, and Amir is definitely not. He is not brave. He does not exhibit a lot of courage. He's very bookish. He wants to write stories. And he and his father have such a hard time connecting. And that's part of why Amir never said anything about Hassan's assault, because they were running the kite that he beat in the tournament. And he's like, once I win this tournament, then finally my father will be proud of me.
Yes.
And then it works, but he can't enjoy it.
But so that is why Amir is eventually motivated to go back and get Hassan's son.
Yes. And even then, I've written down here, the way that you feel about Lily from Snowflower is kind of how I feel about Amir.
Okay.
Like, he does these terrible things, and I think it can be excused a little more because he was a child. Like, a character later says, like, it's not inconceivable that you would freeze up in that moment and not go to help him because you were a scared child. But even later, he gets called back by this old family friend who is dying, and he says, this is where Hassan's son is, and you need to go get him. And even then, he's like, you need to go to Kabul and get him. And Amir at first refuses to go. He's like, I won't go to Kabul. And it's not, there's a reasonable side to this argument, which is like, I have a wife back home.
Yeah.
It's not a safe place, like all of that. But that's one of the elements, like, it's both in a good way and in a bad way. He brings his good and his bad traits with him from childhood into adulthood, that I'm like, even after all of this, you still refuse to go to Kabul to help this boy that you know is being sex trafficked by the Taliban. Like, it aligns very closely and very purposefully, I think, on the part of Khaled Hosseini, to align what's happening to Hassan's son to what happened to Hassan, and to put Amir in a position to be able to prevent either of those things.
Yeah. It's a bit contrived, I think.
Definitely, especially because when he gets to the Taliban And that's me. It sounds stupid when I say it. That's me simplifying it crazily. He doesn't just go to like Taliban Street.
No, it's like a whole...
It's a process.
It's a journey.
You don't need to hear all of it. It's not really important to like the symbolism or whatever. But he gets there, and then the person who has Sohrab, Hassan's son, is Asif, who was the bully who assaulted Hassan when he was young. And that, like, it's supposed to be a full circle moment. It's a very literal full circle moment. It is a bit contrived. It's okay. It's not, you know... Is it the most sophisticated thing in the world? Absolutely not. But it's fine.
Yeah, and it just, the cycles of violence against children repeating, and then just kind of as it allows Amir to step in. However, I do want to, I think now is when I'm going to bring in some more of my comparisons to Fruit of the Drunken Tree, because I see we both have several.
A lot of the books that we read, we kind of accidentally stumble upon like a foil for them. Yes. And this one definitely is Fruit of the Drunken Tree.
Which is crazy because I liked this one a lot more.
It's better.
But so a note about the violence, because both of them have sexual violence in it. I really like that the violence wasn't gratuitous in either. We were aware of it and understanding the impact it was having on the characters. But we didn't have that detailed rape scene.
Yes. And in both of these books, they're handled pretty differently. Like we said, Petrona in Fruit of the Drunken Tree, her perspective of being gang raped was very dreamlike and poetic. Like you're not getting anything literal. And in this, you are getting some literal, but it's very quick, simple language, short sentences, not a lot of time. You know what's happening. You move on. And especially when you get later into the book, when Amir goes back to Kabul, Sohrab has been assaulted.
Yes.
And you don't see it happening, but you know that it happens.
Yes.
And it's the language that a 10-year-old is using to express that happened to himself. And it's heartbreaking.
It is.
This book does not shy away from representing the violence in Afghanistan and what has happened to the Afghan people as a result of it. It's using, this microcosm as a example of the broader country.
Yes. There are some other notes I had about things that I really liked about this book that I would like to share before we get into talking more about the later parts of the book as history. So I'm just kind of going to run through them. I thought culture was illustrated super well. The wedding scene and those chapters are a really good example of the wedding customs in Afghanistan.
Yes.
But it didn't read like a textbook explainer. Like it was very much written for someone who's not familiar with those customs, but it didn't feel that way.
I always appreciate, we have another book. Actually, you'll find out later. We have next week's book, which deals a lot with people who speak another language, as does the Kite Runner. And I always enjoy in those kinds of books when they drop the words into the middle of a sentence and don't tell you what they are.
Yes.
I don't want it spoon-fed to me. I want you to write your book and then I want to figure it out.
Yeah.
I don't want to feel like I'm being babied. I want to learn about another culture through that kind of immersion.
And it's not on the author to explain everything, but no. I thought it wasn't explained, but it was illustrated beautifully.
And you got the sense of it perfectly.
Yes.
You really got put into a place. And then later, when Amir goes back to Kabul and it's basically destroyed, you can feel like he's standing there picturing what it used to look like. And you can remember it with him.
Yes. So I thought that was a huge strength. I also really liked that it wasn't just boiled down. This is going to sound bad. It wasn't just boiled down to 9/11.
Yeah.
It explained. When this book came out, it was at such a time where the American population needed this.
Yes.
And needed to remember to humanize other people, especially people from Afghanistan.
Absolutely. For reference, this book came out in 2003.
Yes. So if you can imagine, the political
turmoil
here. Yeah.
Yes.
So I loved that it went back to the roots of everything, to the roots of the Soviets invading, the Taliban, all of it.
Yeah, because initially the Taliban aren't the big bad of the whole story because it's Russia at first. There's a whole scene, and I loved this scene because, again, it was, for me, representative of Amir's his sticking point, his worst trait that he had a hard time growing out of. We all have one. And it's this scene where they're fleeing Afghanistan, fleeing Pakistan, I forget which.
I think they're I believe that's when they're fleeing to Pakistan.
They have a stopover.
I forget where they were.
They have a stopover. And a bunch of people are in the back of a cement truck. They get stopped at the border by the Russians. And basically the Russian soldiers say there's, a young mother in the car. And they say, we'll let you pass if you let us all have sex with that woman.
Yeah.
And Amir's father stands up and says, you will not do such a thing. We have paid you. Gentlemen should have honor. And they say, like, we'll shoot you. And he said, well, then you'll have to shoot me because I will not let you dishonor this woman. Mm-hmm. And Amir is thinking, like, can't he just sit down?
Yeah.
And you're like, that is, like, such an illustration of where you need to grow because this is the exact same mistake that you made before and you are making it again.
Yes.
And they get out of there and it works. And the father has successfully saved this woman and her family is so grateful. But it's a very interesting moment how he's thinking, like, can't you just sit down and shut up?
I liked that as showing character's weakness. I like how his weakness was portrayed for what it was.
Mm-hmm. And even though she does terrible things, I think Lily is a fabulous character.
Yeah.
I think she's a great protagonist. I think she's a really good person to read about. Like I said, reading The Henna Artist and reading about Lakshmi and her greed, I love that. She would have been so much more toothless if she didn't have it. I like a negative trait in a character.
Yeah.
Even if it makes some of the reading makes you go, and
let's compare that a bit to your note about Hassan and his lack of bad traits.
Yes, he does not have any. Even when you never see him as an adult, but you hear what he has done as an adult, he never does anything bad. Like there's a scene at the very beginning of the book, it's like a very much character establishing scene where the bullies are coming after Amir, and even though he's afraid, Hassan has his slingshot at the ready to sling rocks at them. Like he's always ready to stand up for his friend.
And before I say what I was going to say, sidebar that the villain at that point becomes the villain at the end too. And Hassan's son really does shoot his eye out with a rock. So I really liked that full circle.
It's extremely full circle.
It made me laugh. And okay, yes, very contrived. I loved it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Hassan, I want to offer a counter opinion.
Okay.
I don't think he doesn't have bad traits. I think we're seeing him through Amir's eyes of he can do no wrong. My father loves him. He can do no wrong. He's perfect.
I think that's true. And I think also I'll devil's advocate my own point here, which is that you can say that his blind loyalty to someone who never cares for him in the same way that he does is a negative trait, that it's naivete. But I think I have
much like Florentino, except less evil.
Boo! Don't say that. I could almost compare it to what I've written down here is Agnes in Hamnet, how she kind of because she was given her magical powers that she kind of always knew everything. And Hassan is that way a little bit. Again, only a little. Like we say at the end, the ending being kind of contrived doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. I feel the same way about this. I think Hassan not having really any negative traits doesn't, whether or not we're just viewing him through Amir's eyes, it doesn't really matter to me. Okay. So that's okay. But I do want to, I think it's something to point out when we're talking about negative traits for a character.
That's very fair. Now let's jump back to the later half of the book because when it's set, I forget the exact years in the book, but it's
early 2000s.
Pretty much contemporary to when
he's
it's
writing
published.
it.
Yeah. So is it fair for us to call this historical fiction? I think it is.
I think it is, especially because we begin in the 60s and 70s. So there's that establishing. If it was a book that was set in 2002, I would say no.
Yeah.
But it's on the line, but I think it certainly should count.
I think so too, because I think a lot of the purpose of the book was giving us that historical context.
Yes.
Similarly to Fruit of the Drunken Tree, which again, as you go on, kind of creeps up more and more to that contemporary line. Mm-hmm. But I think both were important to view as historical fiction.
And I think given we have made some on-the-line choices for the podcast, but I think if that allows us to examine these interesting books with these developed themes, then I think more power to us.
I think it's worth it, yeah.
Absolutely. I don't think I would not want to remove The Kite Runner from our list, having read it. Oh, yeah. And I wouldn't say the same about Fruit of the Drunken Tree, although I definitely did read it and think this doesn't count at all. But
yeah,
it's that one. that one was like, it was set in the 90s, so I was like, it's really a little too close for comfort, but it did such a good job at effectively putting you in like a time and place that I was like, okay, whatever. Like, it worked out, I think, fine, but it was close.
So, do you want to move into the historical accuracy bit?
Yes. I will not even like look at your section of notes because I'm very excited to hear what you have to say.
This is so funny because much like you said last week, I feel like this was a bad job on my end for historical research.
Girl, it's okay.
So, it's funny that you say you're wondering about the similarities between the author and Amir. Mm-hmm. Because something I found was that Hassan was actually loosely based on a Hazara man that the author knew, which is the ethnic minority group, but the author didn't realize it at the time until the book was done. Like, he wasn't intentionally based. He was just like, oh shit, like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, of course.
Okay.
So a lot of it does come from those real life personal influences.
Well, and also we don't really get into this because it is not important at all. But later when he goes to America, Amir becomes a writer. Like, he starts publishing novels. Mm-hmm. And I was like, interesting. What's Khaled Hosseini doing right now?
I don't think it's so much like that because the author... I didn't look closely enough if he was a doctor or just worked in medicine. Mm-hmm. But so I didn't see that align. But there was definitely a lot based on his early life because basically the ages in the first part of the book that Amir was up until like 11, that's how long Khaled lived in Afghanistan.
I was going to say, definitely, like, obviously there are a lot of crazy things that happen later in the book, but the part about being, like, an Afghani boy and who's the son of, like, a well-to-do father, that tracks. Like, it definitely seems like he knows that, and he's not just, like, riffing.
I appreciate him writing that perspective instead of, like... I don't know, it feels more authentic than if the book had been from Hassan's perspective in a way.
Mm-hmm. Well, same with Fruit of the Drunken Tree. We said, like, she wrote herself from the perspective of, like, the little pampered girl because that's what she could write.
Yeah. And I think that was a strength, especially with this being his debut novel.
Yes. He's testing the waters.
Yes. The author describes kites as a very central scene in his childhood in Afghanistan, also very symbolic because in 1999, the Taliban banned flight kiting.
Aww.
Kite flight. Did I say that right?
You said, no, start over.
Which is also very symbolic because in 1999, the Taliban banned kite flying.
Aww.
So it is really symbolic to see, like, how this oppressive regime is growing and, like, taking over his childhood memories and, like, how he remembered his country to be. Mm-hmm. So the story begins in peacetime until the Soviets invade and really establishes that foundation that this kind of started. Everything kind of started as a result of the Cold War.
Yeah. I mean, who's surprised?
The Hazaras were heavily persecuted and discriminated against, especially under the rise of Taliban, but also just kind of continually, which is also illustrated in the book as we see it gets more severe with explicit acts of, like, mass killings and why Hassan died and all of that. So we can see those tensions rising and rising. This is an interesting one. So the attack on Hassan is meant as a metaphor for the brutal regimes that came to power after the Soviets invaded and that loss of innocence and peace. The attack meaning his rape at the beginning. Mm-hmm. So you have this innocent character who kind of represents the before times of the Soviet invasion, and then everything kind of shifts afterwards.
Okay.
And this is where my side note about the movie comes in.
Ooh.
So depicting the scene in the movie was apparently so dangerous for the child actors due to the depiction of sexual violence being highly shameful that the movie couldn't be released until they were relocated to the UAE for their own safety.
The children?
Yeah, the children actors. So I didn't look too much into that. So forgive me if I don't have all the details.
I feel like then they just shouldn't have, it's hard to say, like, cut it out because it's so important to the story, but then you're like, oh man. Like, how can you justify that for the real children?
Yeah. Yeah, investigations from former CIA officers suggest the child actors had a reason to be fearful.
Wow.
Yeah, Paramount Pictures relocated them and their relatives to the UAE.
Because they thought, like, people would do violence to the kids?
Yeah, because of depicting that in the movie.
Oh, man.
Criticism there.
Oh.
Yes, you want the movie to be authentic, and you don't want to cast white kids from America in these roles. But at the same time...
it's hard.
Are you willing to put children at risk?
Yeah, it's the central part of the of the story, but you're at that point, you're like, is it worth it to make the movie at all?
So that's why I had known about the scene in the book. I didn't know about all of this with the movie, as you can tell, because I was still kind of searching a little bit now. Well, it's
interesting because I've seen the movie, and it just, like, it didn't make an impression on me for me to remember it, because I got to that part in the book, and I was, like, aghast.
And then it just shows, you know, cultural readings of the book are so different from our perspective here.
Yeah.
Obviously the book, obviously the movie, but also the book have been criticized by more conservative Afghanis for how they portray the country, especially in the more recent periods of the book.
Yeah.
And an interesting article I found from The Guardian is that the author has said that now he would make extensive edits if he were writing it again.
Really?
Yes. One point specifically being, the novel ending. He quotes, he said, "I sort of dreaded this kind of Hollywoodish thing, and I could see it inching that way and was a little worried." So I think even he was worried about how contrived the ending was.
Oh, well, see, I think that... Are you referring to the ending, or are you referring to, like, Hassan's kid taking out the bully's eye with the slingshot?
It says the novel's ending, but it doesn't really say specific. I think kind of that whole last section you could see as kind of being intended to be full circle.
Okay, yeah. I think that let's spell this out now. This is hopping a little bit back into book discussion. The actual ending is basically, so the Amir brings Sohrab, Hassan's son, back to America to live with him and his wife. And he's having a really rough time. Like, he had attempted suicide before they had left the Middle East to come back. And he was not really talking. Like, he was very blank. Like, he was just never there. And they go out one day to some sort of, it's like a holiday. I think it's like a large, like, outdoor picnic with a lot of other Afghan people. And they're kite fighting. And they, fly the kite together. Sohrab cuts another kite down. Amir says, like, "Do you want me to go run that kite for you? Your father was the best kite runner." And then he says, "For you, I'll do it 1,000 times over," which is what Hassan always said to Amir. And I thought that was, like, so well balanced and so beautiful, because you know that Sohrab is still not okay. Like, and you shouldn't expect him to be that quickly after what happened to him. So I thought, really, if that's what Khaled Hosseini is talking about, that I'm glad that he put it in that way and that he doesn't have the chance to change it. If it's some of the other things, fine.
Yeah.
But that ending I thought was really beautiful.
And one more comparison to Fruit of the Drunken Tree. You can see the girls' trauma at the end still continuing on and how they're not immediately okay. And I think that's a strength of both of these books, that they allow the children not to be like a switch flick.
You feel a lot of truth in it.
Yes. Do you want to head to our star calculator?
I do.
We rank according to historical accuracy, vibes, prose, originality, and characters on a scale of 1 to 5. So how about you get us started today?
All right. So for historical accuracy, I went 4. Again, I feel like that's decent where I need to be. I think enough of this book is based on the author's, like, personal memories and experiences, and also we're seeing Afghanistan through the lens of one specific person enough that it's, like, biased enough that you're not getting, like, a lot of literal history. But we did get a lot, and I was appreciative of it. So I'm going to give it a 4, a good solid 4. Vibes, 4. This is just where my heart tells me to go. Prose, also 4. Like I said, I would compare this to Madeline Miller almost in its simplicity. I think his is definitely a bit more effective, and I think maybe it's because it's writing about something so close to his heart. Maybe not. Maybe that's a bit reductive of me, but good prose, solid prose, nothing fancy, but it's definitely good, what we want. Originality, 5. Like, I think that's a reason this book has such staying power.
Yes.
Like, why you saw someone reading it on the plane in 2024. Because of its originality. And also, you're right, at the time it came out, this is a story that we really needed, and clearly it stuck with people. And characters, 5. For good or for ill, I think they're really effective characters. They're all, like, so fleshed out and individual and real, even if you don't like them or don't like certain things that they do. So that gives me a 4.4, and on Storygraph I rated it a 4.5.
Wow.
So very close. Good job, Ashley.
Okay, so for historical accuracy, I'm going to give it a 4, purely because I think a lot of the important history, the character wasn't necessarily in Afghanistan for. So while we still got it, it was hard to kind of get that perspective in.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff that happened, like, between the Northern Alliance and the Taliban is pretty sketched in.
Yeah.
Just because of the perspective of the character at the time.
Which I think is fine. I don't think it's a detriment.
No.
Vibes, prose, originality, and characters, I gave it a 5 across the board there, which brings me to a 4.8, and I rated this a 5 on Storygraph.
So I think even though the Star Calculator did not literally produce a 5, I think in podcast terms,
yes,
we're going to say The Kite Runner, this is a 5.
This is a 5, and it has made us want to read more by this author.
Yes, we will definitely read A Thousand Splendid Suns. Erin will probably get to it before I do, but we are definitely eager to read more by Khaled Hosseini.
Yes, we are. And Grace, what are we reading next week?
Next week, we are reading The Night Watchman by Louise Erdrich.
Yes, I'm excited to discuss that one because I have some thoughts, questions, and opinions.
It will be a interesting episode next week, and that is me really holding my cards close to my chest.
Yes.
You guys will be surprised, I think, maybe not, with what we have to say.
There's one part in the book I was very surprised about.
I know what part you're referring to.
Anyways, until then, make sure to follow us on social media, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at @5orFlop_pod, and join in on our Storygraph Reading Challenge for Season 2.
And if you have any other general queries, you can always email us at 5orFlopPodcast@gmail.com. Or if there's any books that you think we should be reading, you can always fill out the recommendation form in the bios of any of our social medias.
Until next time,
happy reading!
bye!